Did I ever tell you about the time I basically got kicked out of church? We will talk about that and some 3 a.m. prayers that really worked a bit too well. Let's go back. If you saw my previous video, you know I was saved in the year 2000. 1999 is when my mom died. I experienced a couple of miscarriages with my husband. I was in a low place. I gave my life to the Lord for real shortly after that point in the year 1999 into 2000. So I joined a local church. It was a non-denominational church, still considered a mega church, I guess, because it was around maybe 2,000 people coming every Sunday. And that's why I'm kind of wearing this. I've got this blanket draped around my lower half. It's kind of in honor, an homage, as my mom would say, to the church, because if any of you guys were raised in the black church or you know anything about black churches, you will know if you're sitting on the front row especially, and if a person deems your skirt too short or whatever, they will give you like a blanket or a cloth or a towel, or I've never gotten one of those because I usually never sat in the front row. That's why I'm kind of wearing this like that. So I joined this church in 2000, powerfully baptized in the Holy Spirit in 2002. So there's another video about that. And so by 2008, I was ready to leave that. I'll call it church number 1, my first church. I was ready to leave that church because there was a hot, new, happening preacher in town in a bigger city north of where I live. And he was younger. I remember the choir from that bigger church would come visit our church. And I would think, oh my goodness, those girls, they look so pretty. They're so cosmopolitan. They're closer in my age. The new hot happening pastor, he was funny. It was this bigger, rapidly growing, rather, mega church farther north of here, about half an hour-ish or more north of here. And I'm not going to name the churches or the pastors. I'm not putting anyone on blast. I don't like putting people on blast. I like just telling my story, my screw-ups, how I learned from them, how God drew me closer to Him because of it all. So it was a bigger church north of where I live, about 30, 45 minutes north of here. So I said, look, I'm going to leave my local church and go to this big, hot, new happening church. And that pastor was really funny, and he was just gaining so many followers. He was just young and funny and had a great story of coming from the hood and charismatic and so many things. He's been on, national TV programs and everything. So I said, yeah, I want to leave. In 2008, I left to go to that church. Even though it was a much farther drive away, it was fun. It was like hot and happening. It was 2008. I mean, they had like a skating rink on their premises and just all these fun things at the bigger church. Went over there in 2008, joined that church, didn't really join a ministry yet. I mean, previously at my old church, I had been in the writing ministry. It was fun. I also worked in the children's ministry, as most women in churches usually do. It's usually a lot of women in black churches, fewer men in those churches. And this kind of plays into where this story is going. I had been in the children's ministry previously, watching kids in the nursery. I did that for years. Also wrote in the writing ministry. Such a good blessing, just being around like-minded people, like-minded Christians. Never any problems really in any of those ministries. It was great in my old church. Went to the new church and didn't really join a ministry until 2 years later in 2010. Because in 2010, that's when the, new hot happening young pastor, I will call him pastor number 1, because there's going to be a pastor number 1 and a pastor number 2 at this new big mega church. I should just call it the McDonald's mega church, because the pastor had a vision. He didn't just want this huge standalone mega church. He wanted this particular church to have as many locations as McDonald's. He wanted to go to, I guess, whatever city, turn a corner, almost like having a Starbucks location nearly on every corner. I, was into the vision. Me and my friends and the people who went to this church, we bought into the vision. Yeah, that'd be great. It can help people. They would give out gas cards, groceries, so much stuff, so many things where we really felt like we were helping people. That's what, the gospel says. That's what we're supposed to do, help the less fortunate. So in 2010, this hot new happening McDonald's pastor, as I call him, number 1, he said, we're going to open a location in your city. So basically, it was great. I had been waiting for this for like 2 years. It was 2010. We were going to have our own location of this McDonald's type church in our city. It was so great. We just rallied together like, finally, I won't have to drive so far and I can really be more a part of the church. So I definitely said, yeah, they'll need help. You know, they needed people to join. I was in it. I was convincing my friend to join the ministry. I didn't want to do the children's ministry again. I wanted to do something different. And I ended up, God just placed me right in this media ministry, which I can see now is my calling. It really helped me in a lot of ways. I learned a lot of audio visual things. I still know how to wrap a cord correctly, the AV wrap, they call it. I learned so much in that media ministry, but that's the ministry I would end up getting kicked out of for getting too close in terms of just, speaking and emotionally with my media ministry team leader, who was a man. And I did see him that day when we were meeting. And I'm like, what? With this other girl, we're like, we don't want to be in the children's nursery, but we were kind of surrendered. We were like, okay, God, wherever you want us to go, we'll go. And that's right when we got together with the media team ministry. There might have been about 5 of us to start with. And the head, I'll call the guy Clue, the media ministry team leader, Clue, was the head. And it's just a small location. And these weren't really like locations necessarily being rented out or buildings purchased. They were just services being held inside of old high school locations. The high schools were still active, but maybe they struck a deal with the high school or something where we could hold services every Wednesday night and Sunday. So of course there won't be high school students in classes during those times. So in 2010, there was a grand opening. I was so into this. I really wanted to help bring souls there. I took out ads on Facebook on my dime to bring the people there. Look, there's a grand opening coming, and that grand opening was great. So many people from our local city showed up at the grand opening for that local church. And so many souls just flooded the altar. And I remember being there like with cords. I'm like, being a grip and I'm holding cords and I'm just like, wow. I'll never forget this other guy who's passed on to be with the Lord by now. One time, a bunch of souls flooded to the altar. When a bunch of souls flooded to the altar, he said, don't take this for granted. Like, it can become mundane. It can become rote. When you're serving in ministry, you're focused on, okay, is the camera correct and white balanced? And am I following the pastor correctly? It's intense. We can't forget the reason we're there, to help people believe in Christ, to show them that Christ is Savior. So it was going great. Everything was going fine. We had a great team. We were all growing closer. You spend a lot of time. Once a church gets you in ministry, they're going to want to here's a meeting about the service and here's what's going on and you need to read this and you need to get that. You need to learn how to put the lyrics on the screen. It's good to have fellowship meetings, meet other places, Dave and Buster's or go, whatever, just to foster that team spirit. It ends up taking up a lot of time, especially if it's a larger church. There's a lot to do. So I'm like this wife and mom of young kids, bringing my kids with me when I could, and just so busy, devoting my time to this ministry and giving money. I'll probably maybe do a separate video about this, believing in tithing, pushing into the vision of, let's plant a church here locally, grab even more souls, people who might not walk into a different church because there is none in this neighborhood. Well, this one's in their neighborhood. Maybe they'll just walk on over here or take a bus over here or get a ride over here. And who knows, change their lives for the better. And at the same time, what was really weird, something that was happening, Pastor number 1, the main McDonald's pastor at the huge location, of course, installed what they call a campus pastor. He installed pastor number 2 at this local smaller church. And even though they were close, pastor 1 and 2, and pastor 1, the lead pastor, kind of like the CEO of the church, which I'm sure he called himself because He believed in running it like a business, which in some aspects, of course, you should. There's finances to be involved, in essence, employees involved, but you don't want to lose the heart of it no matter what. So pastor number 1, McDonald's pastor, installed pastor number 2, campus pastor over here for the local church. And it was a strange competition going on between them. Even though pastor number 1 talked about installing him and helping him and all this stuff, you could tell pastor number 1 didn't want 2 to get more popular. That'll kind of play into how this all ends as well. I should have known stuff was going sideways when, my media ministry team leader, very charismatic, good-looking guy. We would talk often. We had a lot in common in terms of like technology and entrepreneurship, business minds. It's dynamic when you're around all these Christians, but I learned a warning, like you don't need to get too close in terms of just talking too much. I will say, thank God, never any kissing, no sex, nothing like that involved. But still, you can get too close to a person just by sitting there and talking to them too much or talking on the phone too much to them inappropriately. It's not necessary. That is the lesson I had to learn. Warning number 1 was kind of like sitting there in church, talking, going over stuff during service. In this old high school building, during service, it's like part of the ceiling fell down. It was like, whoa. It shocked a lot of people. It was scary. This one guy was like holding his kid, and he took it as a warning too. It fell down right in front of him. Thank God, I don't think anyone got hurt. But he took his kid and he literally ran out of church. Rather, a deacon ran after him, and he took it as, whoa, this is a warning from God. And I kind of took it that way too, like, whoa, like maybe I don't need to be sitting here yakking about money strategies or whatever. Just focus on the sermon and serving. And then warning number 2 was the biggest warning for me. We would fast corporately as a church every October. I remember fasting for about 5 days. I don't know, I think I probably drank vegetable fruit juices. I remember eating bread on the 5th day, one of these fasts. I don't know. We would do it every year. And I remember driving up to the larger location, laying on the altar. I had this vision of this chain, silvery chain, but it was connected by this brown weak link, and it broke. And then I remember seeing this goofy green snake kind of like up on the stair on the altar in front of me. I took gardening choppers and like chopped its head off, and there was another green snake over there. I think I kind of know what it's representing. And then behind me, it was so scary, near the piano, there was this big black snake. It was all in like the vision, kind of like the supernatural vision I was getting, laying on that altar, listening to the word of God playing in the darkened sanctuary and fasting. It's such a powerful time, and God was showing me what was about to happen, and that black snake was so scary I just ran away from it. I literally kind of woke up out of the vision and went back to the pews or something. During that time also, not only had local church been open right where I live, the main church opened a different location even farther south from where I lived, a half an hour south away. My media ministry leader brought me down to that location closer to, help open another location. I remember still raising those huge curtains and everything. It would have been closer to where he actually lived down there with his wife and children. And I even remember one time needing to deliver some CDs or some kind of info to his house. He's like, oh yeah, you trying to come down here? And I'm like, yeah. And so I went down there to drop it off, and it was like no one home. I'm sure all of this was God's prevention, and I'm sure his wife as well, not even needing the appearance of impropriety. There's so much protection here. I just bless God for it. So, but still him, I felt special. Oh, he wants me coming down there to that new location. And oh, I'm so helpful. They can gash your head up so much where you're great. Pastor number 2 was like, you're my secret weapon. She's my secret weapon, because it's like I know a lot about video editing, and it was almost like, oh, good, in competition with the main campus. I've got this secret weapon here where she can video edit and she can do this and film and do that and do whatever. Use all these skills, not just for the betterment of the church. It was almost like for the betterment of the church. So, maybe this location can grow faster than the other location. And there were so many times where, they want you to step up as leaders. All of us serving in the ministry, step up as leaders, be on the forefront when they want you to give a seed. I remember being convinced, okay, you be one of the ones who gives the $1,000 seed, and they had us marching up there as the first leaders to give the seed and planting essentially these new churches, which no matter the motivation, I believe I want my heart to be right that it still went to help people. It went to, some of these churches, they do help pay people's bills. They have benevolence ministries. They help give people food. So I can only hope it went for good. But there still was gaslighting involved throughout, kind of like, you're so important. That's the main gist of it. It was like, we're all on this team. We're a family. We're together. We're a family. It's Christian love. And there's a verse about that. I think where it was David, where he's talking about, I could have taken the hurt if it were from someone else, but it's like you, my close brother, you're the one who dogged me out. So basically I'm down there in this campus location number 2, and it was a weird vibe. It was more intense, and the director's room was up in this small control room, and it had all this weird graffiti on the walls, some obscene stuff. And I remember going in there and it's like a empty bottle of liquor and sex and stuff written on the walls. It was just strange. And I remember taking my dad's lamp because during the same time I was dealing with a lot. I was driving back to where my dad lived, 6 hours away, taking care of him. He was elderly. Ultimately, he ended up passing away in 2011. And that's kind of like when all this stuff was coming to a head when I was serving. I just remember my ministry leader's wife saying, we're praying for you, because I went to fly down to Texas for my dad's funeral. And for a second, I was like, why is she praying for me? I had totally forgotten my dad had passed away. So it was just a weird headspace to be in. But we buried my dad. I came back home. Obviously, I was still grieving and trying to keep busy. I was naturally busy. That's one thing about serving in a church ministry. It can really make you busy. You can be very busy because there's so much to do, and they'll always find something more for you to do. In a way, it's like free labor. I know some people don't get why we do it. The clue guy and I are getting all closer, and it's like more alone down there. My dad's lamp, I remember I took from home, was in the control room. It was just getting creepier and creepier, going towards a place where it shouldn't, and I just felt, ugh. And I remember one time standing behind the camera, the big pastor, CEO, had come down there to preach. He was calling out like the spirit of suicide and calling people to the altar to banish those thoughts. And I was working the camera. You can't take your eyes off for a second, or, you'll miss the shot. But I almost remember like, wow, I want to go down there. And I'm thinking, why would I want to go down to that altar? I'm not feeling like harming myself, but God knew what was coming. So in the meantime, I was always writing online, creating online. Amazon Studios had started this contest of something like, create a script and create a 30-second trailer or something like that. If you have a movie idea, submit it. I remember creating a script kind of like what I was going through. Oh, it was called Church Secrets, so that's one thing, which I would love to still see as a drama. Before Greenleaf came about, we don't really see any church dramas that are based on the real. Even Greenleaf wasn't based on what really goes on behind the scenes of a megachurch. So I really want to still create that one day. But for this one, I just wrote different scenes. I remember filming honey dripping from lips and saying, the lips of an adulteress, or her speech is sweet, but in the end, her end is as bitter as wormwood. It was good. And I can't remember, people don't understand. I like to take reality and fiction and go off and create all these storylines of what could potentially happen. So I wrote the script and I filmed the little preview, and I must have posted it. I think I linked to it from one of my websites. And I remember it was taking so long to upload, and it was like right at the deadline. October 31st, I remember. I was like, okay, I'm going to try and let this thing process. I was running into problems, but I said, God, if it's your will, I do remember that, which I'm grateful praying over. If it's your will, this Amazon Studios project will make it in under the deadline. So I guess I went to sleep and woke up like November 1st or something like that and saw, wow, it made it in. It got in there. I didn't end up winning the contest. It would have been like $5,000. I don't know, maybe you would have gotten exposure for your script or something like that. But I remember it made it in. So I would promote it, like link to it from my website. But of course, by the end of that, I think it might have been Friday, November 5th. Of course, the church people were watching. Aren't church people always watching sometimes? Some of them just trying to, so busy to. That's why I like to look. This is what we should do. Point the finger at what we've done. I know it's real trendy right now on YouTube to talk about how sinful Beyonce is, how sinful Sam Smith is. I'm not saying some of these people, some of these Christians observing things, I'm not saying they are wrong necessarily. What I'm saying is the approach can come off as hateful. Unless you're truly hearing from God, you've truly been in that prayer closet and said, God wants you to speak this word about Beyonce. If not, it just comes off as so harsh and judgmental. It comes off as, I'm trend jacking and I'm clout chasing off of Beyonce and Sam Smith's name when I really should just be in my bed praying for them. God will reveal whatever he needs to reveal to Beyonce or to Sam Smith, and it's up to them to heed it. It's not up to me, in my opinion, as a Christian, to get on here and finger wagging, because I've had it happen to me too much. That's what all the Christians need to do. That's why I'm putting this on here almost jokingly, but these are the reasons why people leave some churches. I was thinking, like, what's acceptable? Like one time I wore a sweater kind of like this. It was more like this, and it was white, and you can see that these are like, how knit sweaters are a little see-through, but I had like, of course, a tank or something on under it, and I was in the basement of the original church, and this older guy just comes up to me like, oh, you're cold? Oh, you're cold? The reason you're cold, we've already discussed. I was like, creeper, what are you talking about? Like, there was some John Maxwell, I believe, video we had just watched or something where some of these, especially older church people, are like so focused on what you are wearing, and it's always much more focused on what the women are wearing, and that gets so annoying. And another time I remember at the new church, I thought it was really cute, when I was like thinner, and it had like, I think a cross on it, and it was white, like, a fitted shirt and some flare pants. And this guy goes through this whole routine to say, now people in this section, evaluate what you were wearing, and it was just so obvious who he was talking about. And afterward, this one woman was so nice to me. She was like, that's a cute shirt. It was like, my whole point is, okay, even this, whoa, I'm showing shoulders, whatever. We have to leave more room for God and the Holy Spirit to speak to people instead of trying to be a puppet master and dog out what they're wearing. And these churches, they wonder why they're losing attendance. Thankfully, God has me in a great church now, more than 10 years, a much better ministry. But let me tell you what happened. When pastor number 2, who was basically my pastor of the local church, some church person, probably maybe my media leader's wife, I don't know, someone probably stalking me, because before that I had confessed. I had even did a conference call, and I was like, this is getting too close. This situation here, it's not feeling right. Like, when you're getting to the danger zone, the slippery slope. So at first it was like, oh, cool, great for standing up. Okay, all right, well, we'll switch locations or something, separate you guys. But then someone, probably his wife, found where I was promoting that church secrets project, forwarded it to my pastor, and then he calls on a Friday, I'll never forget. I'm driving my kids to school, and he's like all kind of cold, like, I've been forwarded a link to this script, and I'm gonna ask you to take it down. And I was just so hurt, and I was, obedient. I was like, you leave room for like, okay, is this really really God speaking to me through my pastor or not, I was like, fine, I'll take the link down. I mean, the script wasn't even that, it was fictional. It incorporated some real activities in there, but it was nothing like salacious, or there weren't like sex scenes in it and all that stuff. Pretty tame. I'm sure it would have been like a PG movie, if it really had gotten made. He was just angry, maybe just because I had included the line where he called me his secret weapon. Church people, I could go on for days. So he's like, not only do I need to take the links down, fine, which I didn't have to do, but they praise you if you're teachable, and all these like gaslighting words. Some of them might really be in the Bible, but some, they get taken too far. That's why I don't want to speak their names, or I'm still not harsh towards them, because I take my ownership in what I did. And also, I do think about that verse, touch not mine anointed and do my prophets no harm, even though so many pastors have used that to, over the years, just, in the 80s or whomever, pastors around the world have unfortunately used that to try and create undue control over people. We've seen the downfall of many ministries, but we'll see, and then you'll see the church people like, why didn't you say all this was going on? Well, because of verses like that are taken out of context and misused. Touch not mine anointed and do my prophets no harm. That doesn't mean it gives, a pastor carte blanche to run off and do whatever, which in the past some pastors have done. But anyway, I took the links down. Then he went on to say, okay, basically you need to sit down out of ministry, which basically means, okay, we're kind of kicking you out of this ministry, but sometimes it's only for 30 days, 90 days, You need to sit down out of ministry, he said, basically, and just, soak up the word some more. So I was like, fine, that's hurtful. But then I remember asking for how long, and he said, until. Like, I will never forget that. That was the power tripping right there. It was like, I see where this is going, casting me as the whoremonger, demonic Mary Magdalene type, and all the guys are good over here. Just because I wrote a script about the truth of what was going on, and even just embellished to make it fictional, to make it more interesting. Some people didn't understand. They're like, that never happened. And I'm like, because it's fictional. That's, don't get me started. I was so hurt. He's like, take the script down, sit down out of ministry until, like, basically as if he's God, like, until I say so. It just really went left. And then I was just so hurt. The very next day, that Saturday, there was going to be like this big celebration. It was November. It was like, appreciation for all the ministry workers at the main location. And I was still like, can I still come to that? And he was like, well, yeah, okay, you grind it with us. So yeah, that was like one saving grace. And, come in, and he had me speak with his wife and all that. The next Saturday, I did go, with my friends to that ministry celebration. It was skating and all that. My media team ministry leader was there with his wife, and of course we weren't speaking to each other. He would end up calling me. That's the kicking out part. Saturday, I'm there and just avoiding him and with my friend, and we're enjoying this ministry celebration, skating, and I just won't forget the old songs they played. That one song, the last drink, the last drop of wine, whatever that song is. It was so old, I hadn't heard it in forever. Almost got off the rink at the spot where Clue guy was, but I was like, no. So he was trying to hold court over here with all the people he's charming, all the other, there's a lot of women in ministry. So I can admit I was flirty. He was flirty too. Other women were. And, it's easier, I guess, for a wife to say, look at all these women, they're to blame, instead of looking at their husband's actions. So that's what was happening at that point. And then I just remember seeing them leave, and his head was down. And I thought, that just sucks. Too bad this ended up that way. I was just so hurt. But the next day, I guess the next Sunday, I think I planned to go back to my local church and just sit, like my pastor had said, sit and get the word in, soak it up. They treat you like, okay, you're too bad to be a leader, sit on down. Like they do that to some people if they are going through a divorce or something has happened. They'll have them sit and soak up the word as if they're this bad person and as if they're up here. And that was the vibe at that church. So I had planned to go Sunday and just sit in the audience audience, not in behind the cameras or behind the scenes, not having fun with all the other people. Sit and soak up the word. Take my punishment, as it were. I was being treated as if I had published the Mein Kampf or something, like it was just weird. I can laugh about it now. I'll tell you, back then, I was not laughing. I was so devastated. And so then after the Clue guy calls me one night and is like, what was on your mind? Why would you publish that script? And I think about it all these years later, like it was never like, okay, let's talk about the contents and how we were just getting too close and talking too much when we shouldn't have. And he never took any culpability for anything he was doing, as far as I know. It was just all like, how could you do that? And I was just crying, and I thought, yeah, it was immature. But then that's when he's like, and I couldn't even enjoy myself at this celebration. He's like, because I felt like everyone was watching us to see what we would do. So he's so self-focused, like I couldn't even enjoy myself. So for that reason, he's like, this is still my leader above me I'm looking at in terms of, God's kingdom of hierarchy of who he places above you. In essence, basically, don't come back to that local location. Don't come back to that local church, in essence, is what he was telling me. So it's almost like being disfellowshipped or excommunicated or, whatever you want to call it in whatever genre. Being shunned, immediately taking out the media team group text and even telling other members, don't talk to her. It was this big campaign of shunning. It was ridiculous. Of course, my close friend, we still talked because we were in the ministry together. I'm the one who encouraged her to get there. But it was just ew. It was kind of like being spread, don't talk to her, like she's the bad girl. She was trying to do whatever. Making up all these lies, I'm sure. They were going to raise up Clue Guy to be a deacon while they, meanwhile, kicked me out just because I exposed what we were going through. Like, this is too much. We're talking too much. This shouldn't be. But then I get kicked out, and I get kicked out of that local church, and I was just so devastated because, for the past 2 years, that had been my church, and then especially from 2010 to 2011, the local church, the media ministry team, the close growth, the fellowship, bringing food, eating, going to each other's houses, and it was a great vibe. And then to have it all ripped away, like, oh, you're our family, you're our sister, we're brothers and sisters in Christ, we're family. To be in 1 or 2 phone calls, ugh, you're bad, you're horrible, you're evil, you're whatever. It was like, okay, whatever. Don't get ahead of yourself here. Like, she goes after married men or whatever the lies are. I'm like, please, believe you me, if I wanted you that bad, I could have had you. That's all I'm going to say. So devastating. Out of there, I actually went back and drove to the main location for the next 2 years. So from 2010 to 2012, I was like so heartbroken. Oh, it really was sad. I really did become suicidal after immediately getting kicked out because it was like my dad had died, and then I just got all these people I thought were so close to me ripped away. And not only that, just being cast in this light of the whoremonger or the Mary Magdalene or whatever. Not even that, because Jesus loved Mary Magdalene. Jesus didn't treat women this way. Just so much devastation. But the great part about it is, God helped me not harm myself. I mean, I was just really a low point. My friend, she took me out to these falls at this park, and it was just so gorgeous, this Bridalveil Park, and I just spilled it out to her. I told her it got so bad. I was just ready to, at that point, I had considered maybe taking pills or something. But I remember not doing it and just leaving the bathroom and saw my daughter right there. And I'm like, oh, praise God. The depth of hurt people don't quite understand when they're like, oh, we love her. Oh, kick her out. She's out of here. She's shunned. Nobody talk to her. She's too bad. They don't realize what that can do to a person internally who you were giving all this adulation and praise to initially. Okay, so that part, God got me through it. And I remember going to different parks along this river, as a national park, gorgeous river, and I would just park every morning. I'd drop the kids off at school. I would park, I would take my Bible, and I would read. It was some of the best times because I wasn't so busy giving everything to this church. And I pray that, I did make a good difference there, but it was time to move on after that. I would read every morning, read in the Bible, read a word, the sunlight, morning sun glistening off the river. And then I would take these long walks through different trails. I would take long walks, and God was moving and changing things. I didn't really know everything of what was going back at the church. I wasn't a fighter. I wasn't going to put everyone on blast like, no, that's not what happened. This is really what happened, blah, blah, blah. God really impressed upon me that he was handling it, and boy, he really handled it. All those walks, praying and speaking in tongues. I remember around that time I was just telling the team or close team members, speak in tongues, pray in tongues a lot for whatever reason. And I started walking through the woods, praying and feeling God change things without even knowing what he was changing. So God works, like we're going to say at the end, drawing near to him, he'll draw near to you. I felt I got so much closer, I feel like, to God than when I was in ministry. Because when I was in ministry, I was surrounded by all these people, and it was fun and it was busy and we were doing a lot. But that doesn't mean I was necessarily close to God. When he got me alone in those parks and walking and reading his word and just no music. I don't like to walk with music on in the woods. I like to look out for animals and everything. He got me alone. He really changed me or helped me self-examine why did I get myself in that position in the first place, which ultimately, thank God, I was like, duh, before it went too far. I was like, get me out of this. But I didn't need to take on the companionship or the conversation of another person just from being lonely or whatever, when I should have been spending that time and talking to God anyway. So that's what I ended up doing over the time after getting kicked out. And I was just so devastated and missing people and hate, this reputation they were trying to put on me and raising themselves up. I mean, his wife, I couldn't believe it. His wife had put on Facebook, God raises one up and puts down another. And I'm like, don't get too cocky now. I'll just say, don't get too, because I'm taking my hits and I'm taking my lumps. And I remember months later, Clue Guy did text me. It was really cold. It was so snowy. And he was just like, must have been feeling guilty or whatever, saying like, oh, I never really did thank you for all the work you did in the ministry. And you really did do whatever. And I was like, yeah, excited to get that and like, thanks, whatever. But I was still being real, kind of like, F you, like, whatever, dude, just go away. It takes a while for the gaslighting and that pimp preacher stuff. That's why they have a pimp preacher site. It takes a while to recognize that pimp preacher plan stuff and how it's affected your mind and soul. And that's why I move so differently now, that by the grace of God, I don't want to fall for that stuff anymore. And I do keep arm's length, I'll tell you, from my current church in certain respects, but still serve to be effective. I'll explain that to you. It's so much better now. It's like, keep that playboy preacher stuff that even Christian people, we can bring into the church, unfortunately, where it has no place. It doesn't belong. Walking months through the woods. Then later I find out, one girl I saw in Walmart, I used to be on the media ministry team with her. And she was like, did you hear, Pastor number 2 and Pastor number 1 broke up. Pastor number 2 is off to start his new church. So he went off and started his new church. That was a huge split. So Pastor number 2, the one who was like, until, to me, he ended up leaving. And I ended up seeing him once at a gas station. He had the nerve to act like nothing had ever happened. And maybe he didn't even remember, but I remember when he had me come in and speak to his wife and just get a little counseling session when this all went down. They didn't necessarily completely drop me, but it felt like that. But I remember walking in that office and leaving her office, and he totally just had his back turned to me, like wouldn't even acknowledge me. But now I see him at this gas station and he's all like, hey, I remember you. And I just look like, and maybe he remembered then. But now if I see them, I don't know if I've ever seen him or his wife again, but maybe at the grocery store, it's whatever. It's God bless you and I wish the best. No harm, no foul. I take my ownership in my parts of it, but between whatever, that's between them and God. However they move or however they remember their actions. But you can't treat people who you're all up in their face when you need $1,000 for your church growth and it's all peaches and roses and you're the secret weapon and you have all these talents and we want you, blah, blah, blah. But then when it's something truth telling, a little shadiness going on, then it's like, oh, just fellowship. Nobody talked to her. That part's done. As for the Clue guy, my media ministry leader, turns out he had been relocated here in the local area back then from different cities to work as an engineer for a great company. Turns out, I believe he lost that job because him and his wife and family ended up, I hear, moving back home. That took care of that too. And I don't know if it was because, and it probably wasn't, maybe layoffs happened, I don't know what happened, but at times he would call me from his job, during the day, talk about whatever. So I don't know if it was because of that, probably not, but it felt like God corrected so many things. Instead of them going on like, oh, to be a super pastor and here I'm super deacon and we're going on and we're living this life at this church and she's shunned and she's out of here. No, Pastor 1 and 2 break up. He starts his own church, and then Clue media ministry guy, instead of becoming Mr. Holy Deacon, got rid of that whoremonger, then he most likely loses his job and has to move back home. The good part was just him being away from me, and just God makes all the crooked paths straight because I was really so hurt. But it's weird how God used supposedly sinful things like the show Modern Family to really just make me feel so good. Wednesday night, church people, old school church people would always go to service on Wednesday nights. So I would always work that service as a ministry media team member. Wednesday night we were working that service no matter who was there or not. It was good. Playing music, the service, filming, burning the CDs, distributing them, all this stuff, or the DVDs, all that stuff. But Wednesday nights, once I was kicked out, in essence, it was all of a sudden, it was like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with Wednesday night? I just felt this hole in my schedule. But that's when I started watching Modern Family with my husband. We could drink a glass of wine. I have the warmest memories of that time because, it's weird how your church family is supposed to be there for you. And I know I failed them in certain respects, of course, by acting the way I did and not cutting it off sooner, or acting in a way where I act more now, where it's like, keep people at arm's length. I need to insert that video right here. Maybe you've seen it, but it's the video of that cute black guy who's like, come on, girl, your husband, he should treat you like a queen and blah, blah, blah. And, he gets, his nose goes so far into the camera. That's what some of these people remind me of. Even Christian people, we can act that way, just being that temptation that's no good. But I have the warmest memories of Modern Family, watching it, because it was like a new shift. Like, okay, this is my new normal. It's okay to chill at home, have a glass of wine, watch Modern Family. How that was there for me, as opposed to my church family in the ministry. And that was such a trip. Of course, my good friend, she was still there for me, thankfully. And I prayed a 3 a.m. prayer, which is funny. During that time, I was so upset. I was like, all these people who did me wrong, God, wake them up at 3 a.m. until they repent or whatever. And I remember the pastor number 2 preaching after that saying, God woke me up at 3 a.m. I was like, ah. And then one person still wakes up at 3 a.m. And so I was like, oh my goodness, Lord. I didn't want it to be like an imprecatory prayer. Like, I was like, yikes, you can, by now, this has been 11 years ago. I was like, you can have them sleep by now. Thank God for it. That's it. God made all the crooked paths straight. After I got kicked out about end of 2011 from that local church, and I still went to the main campus branch for about 2 more years. I couldn't stand it anymore. It was just, I needed something to, I'd been there for several years. I needed some church to go to. I would make the drive. I kept going and sitting and, grateful to God for correcting all that other stuff. Almost like restoring my reputation in Jesus so people could see, okay, yeah, it wasn't all her that caused this issue. It wasn't really about her writing her script or some movie. But even then, I couldn't sit under that McDonald's pastor anymore either. Just got to be too much. God bless him now. I can watch him on YouTube and all that stuff and just find the joy in it because I'm not serving under him anymore, but he was trying to tell us not to watch that reality show, Pastors of LA or something like that. Remember that reality show? I think it was pretty short-lived, where it's just like, oh, these pastors living lavish lives and all that stuff, and he was literally telling us, you shouldn't even watch it. And I'm like, I'm a grown woman. You're going too far. You're doing too much. You don't tell us what to watch on TV. Jesus and God, the Holy Spirit, they are on the throne, not you. So a lot of pastors and some black pastors, they really get it twisted. At that point, I left that church, which would have been about 2012. For the past 10 years, I've gone to a different church. It's probably even larger, but my other friend, my best friend, she took me there one Saturday, and the vibe was just so beautiful. The music was so beautiful. I knew that's where I was meant to be. I ended up joining that church and just becoming a member. That's where I've given my tithes and my time for the past decade. It's been amazing. My son got baptized there. I mean, it's amazing. I joined the prison ministry there, and they do it correctly. They don't really mix up the men and the women unless you're married. You can go serve together and go to a male prison or whatever. I go, it's just me and my female ministry team leader. She's great. Just the two of us go into our local jail every month, only on the women's side. My first church, I remember the only time I went back in this local jail, they even had us women on the men's side. And there's a reason that people put boundaries and structure on things, and that's one reason. So my female ministry team leader, every month we go into our local jail, we help the women there. She delivers a sermon, and I'm passing out stuff and picking the music and introing her, and it's perfect. And I don't know if this is good or not, but I'm just saying, I don't even drive down to the location. There's only a few locations. I don't drive down to the main location and go to all the meetings and get in all the fellowship, and I'm busy enough anyway with my other YouTube stuff, but it's also a good protection for me in a way. I can serve and still be hopefully faithful and hopefully pleasing to God without getting all in that nitty-gritty. Just keeping people at arm's length, even Christian guys. And it's not even about, my husband and I have discussed some of this stuff. We went to counseling and all that stuff, but it's not even about sinning against your mate. It's about sinning against God. What was that one in the Bible, Joseph, where he was like, oh, my brothers, how could I treat you badly? Do I sit in the place of God? Or even David at one point, I think when David cheated maybe with Bathsheba, he recognized this is a sin against God. So it's not even emotional adultery, whatever adultery. It's not even about sinning against your mate. It's about sinning against God and Jesus, and that's what you want to avoid. So I hope all this made sense and helped someone. It's helping me just to get it out and remember what God did. The main point too is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. If you've been through some of these hurtful situations in church, it helps to recognize your ownness in the part and let God heal that and reveal that and let God fill those empty spaces. I don't need to be sitting and talking to someone when I could talk to God. This alone time helps me anyway, walking and talking with Him. It helps me gather my thoughts, write them down, create videos. He's flourished my business on YouTube. It's so much better. So let's close with James 4:8-10. Draw near to God and He will draw near to you. Cleanse your hands, you sinners, and purify your hearts, you double-minded. Lament and mourn and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning and your joy to gloom. That's what I needed to happen to me. It's nice being around people, but when it starts getting icky and the enemy is going to try, no matter what, that enemy is going to be there. When you're going through stuff, he's going to try and slip in when stuff is good or bad. He's going to try and slip in how he can get in. But it's good that I was afflicted in this way. It's good I experienced that hurt and got me out of it and got me through it and forgave me and taught me how to walk and talk and move even better and prospered me. So that might be a future video I'm thinking too about how Christians can actually start a YouTube business or make money online and flourish. Our voices need to be on here. Take care, subscribe, and look out for that.